Hello everyone. Tonight we bring you a story that's making headlines across the country and stirring debate in every corner of Washington, D.C. Just yesterday, on September 22, 2025, the Supreme Court handed down a decision that has sent shockwaves not only through the halls of Congress but also into the homes of millions of Americans. This ruling is being called one of the most consequential legal moments in recent memory. In a late-night emergency order, the court gave President Trump the green light to remove a top official at the Federal Trade Commission, or F.T.C., a move that has sparked intense reactions from both supporters and critics. This isn't just about a single government job. It's about the very foundation of presidential authority, the principles of fairness in our democracy, and the rules that have guided the relationship between the White House and independent agencies for nearly 100 years. At the heart of this legal battle is Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, a respected F.T.C. commissioner. Until now, she and her colleagues could only be removed for serious wrongdoing, a safeguard designed to keep these agencies independent from political pressure. But with the Supreme Court's order, that protection has been put on pause. This signals a dramatic potential shift, one that could give the president sweeping new powers to hire and fire officials at agencies meant to operate independently from the Oval Office. Legal experts say this could set a precedent affecting not just the F.T.C., but dozens of other agencies that oversee everything from consumer protection to financial markets. The stakes are high, and the implications could be felt for generations. The Supreme Court's final decision, expected in the coming months, could fundamentally reshape the balance of power in our democracy, redefining the limits of presidential authority and the independence of our government's watchdogs. So, what is the F.T.C. and why should you care? The Federal Trade Commission is the watchdog for the American marketplace, protecting consumers from scams, false advertising, and unfair business practices. It investigates companies that misuse your data or try to form monopolies that drive up prices. The F.T.C. is led by 5 commissioners, with no more than 3 from the same political party to keep it balanced and independent. This structure is designed to ensure decisions are based on facts, not politics. Independence lets the F.T.C. take on powerful interests without fear of political retaliation. That independence and the protection of its commissioners is now at the heart of this Supreme Court case. For nearly a century, a Supreme Court case called Humphrey's Executor v. United States has shielded leaders of independent agencies from being fired without cause. For cause means serious misconduct, not just political disagreement. This rule was meant to let agencies like the F.T.C. do their jobs without political interference, focusing on expertise and long-term stability. Congress designed these agencies to be insulated from day-to-day politics because they handle complex technical issues. Presidents from both parties have respected this boundary for decades. Now, that shield is being challenged. The Supreme Court is considering whether the president should have the power to remove these officials for any reason. The outcome could upend a 90-year tradition of agency independence. The story begins in March 2025, a month that would ignite a fierce legal and political battle in Washington. President Trump, in a move that shocked many, fired 2 Democratic commissioners from the Federal Trade Commission, including Rebecca Kelly Slaughter. The decision sent shockwaves through the Capitol, raising immediate questions about the future of independent government agencies and the limits of presidential power. Rebecca Kelly Slaughter was no stranger to the F.T.C. First appointed by Trump himself and later reappointed by President Biden, she had built a reputation as a principled and independent-minded regulator. When she was abruptly removed, Slaughter argued that her firing was not just unfair, it was illegal. According to her, the law was clear. F.T.C. commissioners could only be dismissed for cause, such as misconduct or neglect of duty, not simply for political reasons or policy disagreements. Determined to defend her position and the integrity of the agency, Slaughter filed a lawsuit against the administration. Her legal team argued that the president's action threatened the very independence of the F.T.C., and by extension, all similar regulatory bodies designed to operate outside direct political control. The case quickly became a flashpoint, drawing national attention and sparking debate among legal scholars, politicians, and the public. In a significant early victory for Slaughter, a federal judge ruled in her favor, ordering her immediate reinstatement to the commission. The judge's decision underscored the importance of agency independence and set the stage for a high-stakes legal showdown. But the Trump administration was not willing to back down and quickly filed an appeal, determined to assert the president's authority. The appeals court, however, refused to block Slaughter's return to her post while the case was being considered. This left the administration with only one option: to escalate the fight to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. The stakes were rising with each legal maneuver, and the nation watched as the battle over the F.T.C.'s independence moved to a new arena. The administration petitioned the Supreme Court, asking the justices to allow the firing to stand while the legal battle played out. This emergency request put the spotlight squarely on the court, forcing it to confront fundamental questions about the separation of powers and the future of independent agencies. What began as a dispute over a single commissioner's job quickly escalated into a full-blown constitutional crisis. Newsrooms buzzed with updates, legal experts debated the implications, and protesters gathered outside government buildings, all aware that the outcome could reshape the balance of power in Washington for years to come. At the heart of the matter was a profound question: should the president have sweeping authority to remove officials from independent agencies at will, or should those agencies remain insulated from political pressure to ensure fair and unbiased regulation? The answer would have far-reaching consequences for how government works and for the principle of checks and balances. The Supreme Court's emergency order brought this question to the forefront of national debate, signaling that the justices recognized the gravity of the moment. Their decision would not only determine the fate of one commissioner, but could also redefine the boundaries of presidential power for generations. As the nation waited for the court's ruling, one thing was clear: the stakes had never been higher for the future of government accountability, the independence of federal agencies, and the enduring strength of American democracy. Yesterday, the Supreme Court's conservative majority sided with President Trump, allowing Slaughter's firing to stand, at least for now. This temporary order signals the court may be ready to overturn a 90-year precedent. The decision immediately puts all independent agencies on notice. Their leaders' jobs may now depend on presidential approval. The three liberal justices dissented, highlighting a deep divide over presidential power. The court will hear full arguments in December, but the uncertainty is already changing how agencies operate. Agency heads may now feel pressure to align with the White House, undermining their independence. The rules of the game have changed overnight. The final ruling will determine the future of agency independence for generations. In the heart of this debate, two sharply opposing views have emerged, each with passionate supporters and far-reaching consequences. The question at stake is not just a technical legal issue, but a fundamental one about how our government should work and who it should serve. The Trump administration and its supporters argue that the president must have direct control over executive agencies. They believe this is essential for ensuring accountability, so that the president can fulfill campaign promises and carry out the will of the voters who elected them. In their view, a strong executive branch is necessary for effective leadership and for making sure government agencies don't drift away from the priorities set by the people's chosen leader. Supporters of this position say that over time, independent agencies have accumulated too much unchecked power. They argue that these agencies, led by unelected officials, can make sweeping decisions that affect millions, yet are not directly answerable to the public or the president. This, they claim, leads to a lack of transparency and accountability. On the other side, critics of the administration's approach warn that ending agency independence would have serious consequences. They argue that independent agencies were created to act as neutral watchdogs, insulated from political pressure, so they can make decisions based on facts, expertise, and the law, not on shifting political winds. These critics fear that if presidents could fire agency heads at will, decisions could be swayed by political loyalty rather than by evidence or professional judgment. This, they say, would undermine the very purpose of having independent agencies in the first place. Consumer advocates and former government officials add that agency independence is what keeps these bodies focused on the public good. They point out that many agencies were established to protect consumers, the environment, and the economy from abuses of power, sometimes even from the government itself. If the old rule is overturned, they warn, Presidents could use their power to reward political allies and punish opponents, turning agencies into tools for personal or partisan gain. This could erode trust in government and threaten the checks and balances that have long defined American democracy. The stakes are high. At issue is whether agencies will continue to serve the public interest, guided by expertise and law, or whether they will become extensions of the president's political agenda, vulnerable to the pressures of the moment. Ultimately, this debate is about the very foundation of fairness and stability in government, about how power is balanced and how the voices of the people are protected in the halls of power. To understand today's battle, look back to 1935 and the Supreme Court case, Humphrey's Executor v. United States. President Franklin D. Roosevelt fired an F.T.C. commissioner for political reasons, but the law said commissioners could only be removed for cause. The case went to the Supreme Court, which ruled unanimously against the president. The court said Congress had the right to protect independent agencies from political interference. This decision established the for-cause rule that's lasted 90 years. It set a crucial limit on presidential power over independent agencies. That precedent is now under direct threat. The Supreme Court is deciding whether to keep or dismantle this foundation of agency independence. In dissent, Justice Elena Kagan warned that the court's order hands full control of independent agencies to the president. She argued this undermines decades of bipartisan, expert-driven oversight. Kagan said the decision threatens the stability and expertise these agencies provide, making them vulnerable to political loyalty tests. If leaders can be fired at will, agencies could become extensions of the White House. Her dissent is a stark alarm. A fundamental pillar of government is at risk. The court, she warns, is moving too quickly to dismantle a system that has served the public for generations. So, what does this mean for you and the country's future? If the Supreme Court gives the president power to fire agency heads at will, it could reshape government overnight. Agency leaders could be replaced after every election, leading to instability and constant policy swings. The loss of independence could erode public trust and make it harder to tackle long-term challenges. The final showdown at the Supreme Court is set for December. The justices' ruling will define the balance of power in our democracy for years to come. This is a turning point that will be written about in history books. No matter your politics, this is a story every American should watch.